Seneschal construct is your
Alright, so this is the start of the Diablo IV Campfire Chat.
Season. Your
Supposed to be some big changes,
the Seneschal
especially for itemization coming down for D4.
That can complement the player's build. It can deal damage, crowd control monsters, or even
we'll see, because they need a lot of help with this game.
Providing you a damage bonus. Magical stones are the key
D4
to
bad
customizing
is
and empowering
real.
your construct. They are primarily found in vaults.
But yeah, they're just going over now.
It's
like a trailer for the Season of the Construct quest line. And then once this is done, they should go into the live campfire chat.
Stone is a singular modification
I'm real
for
curious
any
to see
of governing stones.
what they're going to do
progressing through the
about
construct,
itemization.
leveling up their Seneschal, adding new abilities and improving them. You're going to find abilities that are going to deal damage to packs of monsters, to single monsters, and also abilities that are just focused on buffing the power of the player themselves, so that players have different options as they're progressing through the season.
One cool ability is Auto Defense. Auto Defense summons a magical barrier around your construct that shoots down enemy projectiles. Another cool ability that your construct has is Focus Fire.
So maybe they're getting more abilities, because I don't remember seeing that ring of protection. Because I have a 100 bar. I did the Season of the Construct, and I got to 100, I think, within the first week, and then
are seasonal dungeons that are filled with a
turned it
high
off. I haven't played it
concentration
since.
of deadly traps, where you can farm for the magic stones for your Seneschal constructs. You can find the entrances in different zones of Sanctuary. When the player enters a vault, they are met in a familiar area of Sanctuary. Then, the player teleports to the vault.
And the vaults were kind of,
encountering great
they were okay.
challenges.
I like doing the vaults
not
more
only have our new construct family
than the
in them,
Nightmare
but
dungeons.
Also new traps built for this
But
season.
even within,
Players are going to
you
discover
eventually get to the point where you just kind of
hazards
avoid
inside
all
these
the
vault
vault
spaces.
traps.
You know, whether it is spinning pillars shooting out flames or other traps.
Because you're really just trying to run through it
while they're progressing
towards
through
the
these
end.
vaults in order to stay alive.
Each vault culminates in a gauntlet of true skill. Players must avoid traps while fighting waves of enemies and a powerful elite. If you survive that, the traps will turn off and the treasure room is revealed. If you get hit by a trap, you lose 1 stack of Zoltan's Warding. Zoltan's Warding is a special buff players can get
see, with those
by
stacks
interacting
of
with the statue
ward,
of Zoltan Cool when
you know,
enter
they
a
go by
vault.
5, so I would just get
If
like
they have a
40
pearl of
each
warding,
time, because you end up with so
chests
many.
are special chests players
And
can
then
interact
you
with
can just
at
kind of
the
run
end
through
of a
the
vault.
traps.
If they have
When you get to
enough
the end, you
stacks of
still have
Zoltan's
enough
Warding left over.
to open all the chests
If
at
a
the
player
end.
has more than 1 stack, they can open a rare ward-woven chest. Those have even better rewards. This season introduces our first stationary boss in Diablo IV.
This is going to be a fight against this massive protective golem meant to watch over the vaults. The Malthus, once again, has
That
managed to
fight was
corrupt and
kind of hard
control.
at first until you
Because
figure
it's
out
stationary, it gives us the opportunity
like
to include some
how
of
to
the
actually do it,
season's
because
new
it
traps
changes
into
the
game.
elements on the
This
floor.
presents a lot of unique and new mechanics for the players to
It was
navigate
weird
and
at first,
fight.
but then once you figure it
Players
out,
going to
you
need to
can,
bring all of
you
their
can
skills
easily
and
do it each
abilities to
time.
bear as they try to destroy and fight off these Malthus-controlled constructs. They're also going to make good use of their own Seneschal, make sure they remain upgraded in the fights to come. The Gauntlet is a new, thick-seed, non-linear dungeon.
I didn't try this
Players
yet.
have a fixed amount of time to achieve high scores by proving their might. Any player who unlocks World Tier 4, Torment Mode, can compete in the Gauntlet. The Gauntlet starts several weeks into the Season of the Construct. At the beginning of each week, a new Gauntlet replaces the current one. Unlike other dungeons, every time you and other players enter the Gauntlet that week, it will be exactly the same. Same monster positions, same affixes, everything. This makes it a fair competition. Additionally, monsters within the Gauntlet start at level 100. This is meant to test your fully leveled up and geared out build. It's highly replayable, enabling a broad set of player choices. Players can try different classes and strategies for achieving high scores. Leaderboards are a place for top players to compete with one another in the Gauntlet. These reset each week when a new Gauntlet appears. There are solo leaderboards for each class, as well as party leaderboards that vary with party size. And of course, there are a set of leaderboards just for hardcore players too. But some players may
I
not be
need
ready
to check out the
for that type of
leaderboards.
play.
I have,
So we've
like I
created
said, I haven't
goals
even
for them as
opened
well.
Diablo 4
Each
since
leaderboard has
the
a
first
ladder
week
you
of Season
climb
of
to reach it.
Construct.
Each rung of the ladder awards a seal that you can show off. And when you earn the seal of the worthy, you'll be ready for leaderboard competition. Can't wait to see you in Sanctuary.
All right. See what they have to say. Here we
Hello,
go.
Diablo community. Welcome to another Diablo
Oh,
4
that audio
Campfire Chat.
Yikes.
We have a lot to talk about today. I say that all the time, but I will say that this time we really do. Yeah,
let the people
we will
decide.
let the community decide. I promise you, this is a lot.
There
though.
we go.
But my name is Adam
Fletcher.
My name is Adam Fletcher. I'm the community lead for the Diablo franchise. Of course,
this
I'm
echo is
joined by a wonderful panel here, plus one other who is off camera and will be jumping in. We have Charles Dunn, who's a game designer on Diablo 4, Mr. Joe Shelley, who is the game director of Diablo 4, and Mr. Joe Pipora, who's the associate game director of Diablo 4. And we will be joined by Adam Jackson, who's the lead class designer
That's Joe
of Diablo 4.
I'm covering his name.
Before we get to the class-specific information that we're going to share today. But I know Joe wanted to jump in, talk a little bit about some of the things we're going to be talking about today, and then we will go through a plethora of changes coming to Diablo 4, and of course, details about the first ever PTR, Public Test Realm, for D4. And for people who don't know, Public Test Realm is kind of like
I'm surprised they don't already have a PTR
where
for
players
D4.
can actually end up playing
D3's had one
early
as long as I
content
can
and
remember.
test that out and provide feedback to us.
Although
so we'll
now
go through
we're
all
the
the
ones
details
beta
on that as
testing
well. But Mr.
all their
Joe Shelley,
changes.
want to kick it off?
Thanks, Adam. Yeah, so I want to frame this update. This is a Season 4 update. We're going to talk a lot about systems here. And I wanted to do a little bit of framing. When we think about
Frame away, Joe.
Diablo, right? Diablo is an ARPG. Everybody knows what an ARPG is, right? It's an action role-playing game. But it's such a broad category, right? You have lots of games that are ARPGs. Like a game like Hollow Knight, for example, is an ARPG, but it's also a Metroidvania, right? Or a game like Hades, which is an ARPG, but it's also a roguelike. Or something like Elden Ring, which is an ARPG, but it's also a Souls-like, right? So when you think about what is Diablo and what is Diablo 4, you could call it a Diablo-like, sure. But another way to describe it would be as a systems ARPG, right? An SARPG. And so what distinguishes this kind of game from those other games that are in the same space, that are all ARPGs, right? And it's really about when you're making decisions and what the most important decisions you're making are. The most important decisions in a game like this are the decisions you're making before combat, between combat. Decisions you make in combat are important too, but those are the ones that are the most important. Action combat, RPG elements, and systems are all foundational elements of any ARPG. But in a systems ARPG, the systems in particular, including the end game, itemization, things like crafting, those are what comprise the soul of the game. And they're the lifeblood of a game like Diablo 4, and they don't just have to be deep, but also lush, prolific, exciting. So as many of you know, we've been designing this update for a while. We're putting it on PTR because it's important, and it's important to get it right.
Preloading to this statement.
And everything that you'll hear about today is from that S part of the SARPG, the soul of it. Joe, Adam, and Charles are going to take you through the changes, all the changes, in detail. And there are a lot. So sit back, grab a drink, get your React faces ready, and let's do it.
Are we ready?
Awesome. Well, appreciate it, Joe. So I know what we want to do first, we kind of have an agenda of items, but one thing we do want to talk about really quickly is about PTR. We do want to get some housekeeping notes and what players can expect from PTR, along with the dates for PTR, so when they can actually jump in. So Season 4 PTR is actually going to start on April 2nd, and it's actually going to run for a week through April 9th. So players will be able to jump into PTR and try everything out that we're about to tell you all about here in this stream. Now, I know a lot of people are probably asking, like, hey, that seems pretty close to the end of Season 3. Is that enough time for you guys to actually react to, the feedback that we're going to be getting from PTR? And I will note here that we do plan on actually extending Season 3 for this. So Season 3 is actually going to have a new end date. We're pushing it back a few weeks to ensure that we get all the feedback from this PTR and we apply it to Season 4 to make sure that all these new system changes that we're doing are right and work for the community based off of everyone's feedback. So Season 3 is now going to end on May 14th. And of course, with that, Season 4 also starts on May 14th. So there are a few different changes coming on for the schedule. So you'll see that in-game message, which actually notes like when the season is actually ending, change today probably with this new date for players, so that again we can make sure that we apply all the feedback from PTR, which starts on April 2nd through April 9th. One other note is that again PTR itself is specifically for PC Battle.net only. So this just allows us to be a little bit more agile on our team. Does this mean that PTR is only going to be PC Battle.net only in the future?
Yeah,
no,
how would you
doesn't.
PTR
We are going to try to explore
anyways?
other ways of being able to bring PTR.
Because Xbox would have to review
PTR,
and sign off on
to players
any of the
in the
changes.
future. But for now,
There's
this
no
one
way, 'cause
is
they have like a
PC
huge
Battle.net
process.
only. So, and we'll have instructions of how to actually get into the public test realm client on Diablo 4 through the PC Battle.net client next week, when we actually have a full blog that will explain kind of all the details of how to do that well before the start of PTR in itself. But then there's other notes with PTR as well, because there's probably going to be a lot of questions of like, well, am I starting with like a level 1 character? Am I taking my existing characters? Since PTR itself is a fresh new server,
yeah, it's a new character.
You will actually be starting fresh on PTR, but we do have boosting options available because we need players to actually jump in and test out some of these features that were obviously in these system changes that
That's
we're
nice. I don't
doing
remember them having
specifically
boosting
for PTR.
in D3's
so
PTR.
I think we actually have a slide,
They just kind of set a static.
Speaking of which, I know I
Plus
actually,
however much
bring the camera back
on
to
experience.
me. Sorry. I've seen a lot of feedback about, hey, you guys have a lot of slides. Sometimes the slides have a lot of information, specifically
a lot of wrong information
in them that we need to actually showcase because there might be a lot of details in there. I will say we will have slides
get
today.
That math right
there's a lot to share. But we also have a live build. So we will actually be going to the live build to showcase some of the changes. Just because we know that a lot of players want to see more gameplay or see them in game. So we do have that here today. Okay. Now we can go to the next one. So slide. So there will be PTR boosting features available for players that are jumping into PTR. You will be able to boost a character immediately up to 100. When you do that, you will receive 100 million gold and 1,000 obols. You can do this multiple times. You can even trade amongst gold across your characters, of course. And then we will also mark the campaign complete.
2 rerolls when you're trying to like get the one affix
as well as offering you a mount,
because that becomes a huge gold
and
sink.
More. Skill points again. Paragon, Fog of War will be completely cleared. Altar of Lilith points will also be cleared. It's actually going to match the renown progress on your
I feel like Adam's
Diablo
mic is
4
super
account.
loud.
So if you've already done all your renown rewards and everything, you'll end up getting that completely covered off on your character for PTR. And of course, all the class system mechanics, things like enchantment for sorcerer or like Book of the Dead stuff will be enabled for you for this character that you end up creating for PTR or any other characters that you create. And then all your Paragon glyphs will be unlocked and legendary drop rates will be doubled.
Nice.
And I believe glyphs are also...
Yeah, glyphs are maxed.
Yeah, glyphs are also maxed up.
Wonder if that
you will
still
have
counts
that,
for the Ubers, though.
There are like a few things that will be not present in PTR, but that is, like, for example, one of the things is Codex of Power, but we'll explain why here in a minute. There's some more details related to Codex of Power for players to kind of understand why that's not present there. So we will be accepting, of course, feedback for the PTR across all our different social channels, across all our different community channels, and we will be turning on a specific PTR forum on Diablo4.com. That is not on right now, so no one can actually see it.
Hope these changes are good, or they're going to get
come online, we will also be checking feedback there. So please provide feedback based off of everything that you are hearing today and playing through during PTR between those dates that we actually mentioned, because the team is going to be looking at it and making sure that we can make any changes before the start of Season 4. So with that, now that we've gotten through the PTR,
that's right, let's go.
Yeah.
Mr. Joe Pipe.
Let's dive in, okay?
Let's dive in.
There is quite a bit to cover today, so we're going to try to move briskly through parts where we can. So there's 3 major things we're going to be discussing today. The first, Charles will be bringing us through a number of itemization and crafting changes you're going to see when Season 4 goes live. I want to also be very clear that the changes we're talking about today are all going to be on the Eternal Realm and on the Seasonal Realm. We're not actually talking about the season specifically today. We're really talking about this massive item update in other
AKA fixing the game.
Kind of in parallel to season development during this time. So that's going to be the first part. The next, I'll be guiding us through some of the new endgame content that we're going to be implementing and integrating into the Season 4 release. And then Adam Jackson is going to be coming on to talk about a lot of the live class updates we're making across the various mechanics of the game. So there's a lot to look forward to. Let's go ahead and just, I guess, dive right in. Charles, if you don't mind taking us away.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's start talking about itemization. So
Hello, Charles,
when we think about the itemization updates, I think it's really helpful to frame this conversation around some of the goals that we have for the itemization update. So our number 1 main goal here is to focus on quality of items over quantity of items. So one of the persistent points of feedback that we've gotten since we've launched Diablo 4 last year was that a lot of the items that you find in dungeons and throughout the game, you end up just sifting through a lot of items, searching through your inventory, and reading a lot of lines of text. And ultimately, a lot of the items just end up being junk for you. And that was never really, it never really felt great. And so with this update, that's been our driving, our number 1 goal is to focus on making sure that when we do give you items, they're high quality items, they're much more likely to be useful for your build, rather than just flooding you with endless streams of
the
often
chat,
junk
loot
items.
filter, let's hear it.
The second goal we have here is that the best items in the game, the really pinnacle ones that you get at the end game, they have a journey associated with them. As I said before, you were kind of sifting through your inventory and looking for these items, but once you found that perfect item, you were pretty much done. It was basically a complete item, and you're already done with the item. You've completed it. We think that the game is a lot more engaging when you have a bit of a journey, an investment, whether it be in time, crafting materials, and you really get to customize and make items your own and make it feel like this is for me and my build and my character.
Yeah, and feel that power progression too. It's absolutely the experience. Yeah.
Yeah. And the third goal that we have here is to focus on moments of surprise and delight in the itemization chase. This leads to moments of, hey, I found the item. You get really excited about it, and you just, you have these infrequent moments. It's not going to be all the time, but when you do find it, you're going to know it, you're going to feel it, you're going to be really excited about what just dropped.
Sets were too OP in D3. You kind of had to
so
rely
with that,
on it.
we have a number of topics within the itemization update. So the overview here is that we've got updates to existing systems, such as base items updates. We've got a few additional updates that are kind of adjacent to the itemization system. We've got some updates to Codex of Power, which we sort of alluded to earlier, and I think those are going to be some really big wins. We also have some new systems being introduced here. We've got Tempering, which is going to be a new customization system. Greater Affixes, which help to provide some chase in the end game. These are going to be some of the most powerful items, ones that have greater affixes. And then once you do reach that end game with great gear, you're going to be able to masterwork it to really unlock its full potential and upgrade it to the best possible version that it can be. So let's hop into some of the base item updates. So this is where we're going to focus on making a smaller pool of affixes that are more relevant and more potent for your specific build. So as I kind of mentioned earlier in the goals section, a lot of the affixes and stats that appear on items, they were often very conditional, right? You had like damage while berserking or damage to close enemies or things that were hyper-specific and ultimately just were kind of meaningless in a lot of ways. They blended together. We're really focused in this rework, we're focusing on reducing that pool of affixes to be more general. They're more applicable to a lot of builds. They're not going to be this hyper-specific conditional, and they're going to be more potent. So some examples here, we've got ranks of a single core skill. Sometimes on gear, you would find items that have ranks of upheaval, ranks of whirlwind, and ranks of double swing, all on the same item. And almost no build wants all three of those things at once. So we've made it so that, hey, only one of these can appear. That makes just the subset of items that you find much more likely to be relevant for you. And in terms of like being more potent, we're looking at things like in World Tier 3, only sacred items are going to appear. And then once you get into World Tier 4, only ancestral, only those most powerful versions of items will appear. This means you're just getting less junk, right? Sometimes you'd get sacred items in World Tier 4, and that never felt great because, hey, I'm in World Tier 4, I should be getting the best items now. We also did a pass on the affix values to make sure they're a bit punchier.
I mean, really,
you could feel
why
it
would
when
you
really
think that we would
an
want
item. This often
sacred
was just
or
some
normal
tuning.
items in World Tier 4.
In the past, you might get an item that said, plus
this is
2%
a W,
critical strike chance.
Sad
and honestly, it was hard to ever notice that. Or like plus 5% damage or something like that. And those really small values were just hard to ever notice when you're swapping it, and it never felt like you got to upgrade your gear. So let's take a look at some examples here. Oh, right. So the other update is that we are reducing the total number of affixes on gear that initially drops. So legendary items used to drop with 4 affixes, 4 lines of stats. That's going down to 3. And then rare items, the yellow items, used to have up to 4, and now they'll just go down to 2. And yeah, so the goal here, once again, is to really focus on the quality of the affixes that appear on the gear rather than just the pure quantity. And this also gives us room to build on it in some of the later crafting and tempering systems. You are going to get more affixes, but the base item is going to start with a little bit less just so we have room to grow.
One of the changes that we're making in response to this also, like we know that right now, like rare items are the items that players are using to trade in situations where you find like a really, really powerful template item. So you get a max roll helmet with CDR and such, right? Like there's these are still really important for players.
Max roll,
so as part of this change, we are going to open up trading to allow legendary items and unique items to also be tradable in the starting in Season 4. It's a big change for us. Now, one distinction here to let people keep this in mind is that crafting on either of these items, whether you're going to be tempering or masterworking or anything else later on down the road, these things like enchanting does today, these make these items account bound. So you can't trade them once you get them and after you've done some crafting on them. So we think this does a great job of making sure that the trade economy is still interesting, and that when you're looking for a specific item or an item is dropped for you that a friend can use, it's going to be a lot easier for you to go ahead and hand those things around now.
Yeah, absolutely, and that's.
By the way, I'm gonna know. Adam Jackson.
Adam Jackson snuck in here.
Trading is a big deal. Very important. I'm okay taking it out.
Literally appeared for trading.
He appeared for trading.
Trading fairy.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a very important note, and I know a lot of people might have saw this and thought, oh, rare items are now. How can I trade? But now you can still be trading these legendary items that you find if they're useful for you, or you think they might be useful for a friend.
Oh, and also, I should say uber unique items are not going to be tradable in Season 4.
Obviously.
Yeah, everything is not an uber unique.
And uber unique, yeah. Those are the most powerful items, and if you want those, you're going to have to go and find them yourself.
That's right.
Those are the most powerful items in the game there. All right, so let's take a look at closer example here. So we've got, kind of on the left, before. This is a Boned Wand of Serration. This was before our update. This is what you could currently get on live. And you can see how it's got, plus intelligence, vulnerable damage, damage to shadow damage over time affected enemies. That is a mouthful. Same with the lucky hit, chance to execute injured non-elites. These are the really hyper-specific affixes that we're talking about that really bloat items. It takes a while to parse this. Like, you just can't at a glance tell, hey, is this even good for me?
Yeah, reading through a number of conditional
see, this makes much more sense.
Like when you're like item to item, it's just very
it
is taxing.
Especially when you really fill up your inventory with 30 plus of these items.
You're
trying to sort through them all at once when you just really want to get back into the action, right? You want to get back into fighting demons.
You have your core stats.
So after this itemization update, in the after section here, we have got a similar item. It has intelligence. It has plus damage. That just applies to all of your damage. It's not hyper specific. And we still do get give you a larger bonus if you're hitting vulnerable enemies with this.
Can you get an item now that gives you like int, dex, and strength on it?
No. In fact, because this wand just has intelligence on it, it is just the main stat for your class. So if you are a sorcerer, you're only going to find intelligence on items. If you're a bard, you're only going to find strength, and so on.
I can still find all stat, right?
Yes. Yeah, you still have all stat, but no more you're going to find, oh, I got, intellect on my barbarian. That's just basically a completely dead stat for you.
Got it.
So like it should have been. Got it.
All right, so let's talk about some of the other additional updates that are kind of adjacent to the main itemization updates. Legendary item drops from monsters that are level 95 or higher are always going to be at item power 925. That is the highest item power in the game.
Yeah, why we were
and
in
once you're really facing the toughest monsters in the game, we want to make sure that you're
still
constantly
getting like 800
the best
power.
possible items. This really comes back to our idea of quality over quantity. Once you're at this point of the game, you don't really care about anything that isn't 925, so why are we dropping that for you, right? You're going to be kind of graduating out of caring about item power because you just know that everything I'm getting is the maximum item power. Next, we've done a pass to update our gems. They are a little bit simpler. Some of the gems used to have, once again, those very conditional things like
I wonder if they're going to bring out the
vulnerable enemies was like one stat
They're
on
adding
one gem.
levels to
So we've kind of simplified it so we now just have bonus critical strike damage or bonus vulnerable damage. We've also added some updates to have core stats on them. So some of the gems will have strength, some will have dex, and so on. And they'll have a little bit of a longer crafting tail. They're a bit more powerful at the top end, but they do require a bit more investment to really unlock that highest power level. And once you have all the gems that you want, excess gems will now sell for quite a bit more gold. So that way you're not really going to waste once you have kind of found those best gems. Additionally, we've done a pass on the salvage crafting and rewards have all been retuned for this new world where we're dropping less items than before. Once again, we're focusing on you have less time sorting through your inventory and more time getting back in the action, more time slaying enemies to find those items.
Yeah, there's much less cruft in this version of the feature, right?
Yeah.
Like you're not walking out of a nightmare dungeon with 25 items.
Mm-hmm.
You have to go and deal with it back at the blacksmith.
But the ones that you do have are much more likely to be relevant and useful to you when you do find them. Additionally, we've item rerolling, the enchanting system at the Occultist. We know this has been, it has like a scaling gold cost currently, and that just keeps on ramping up. If you want to keep fishing for that perfect affix, it could cost millions upon millions upon millions of gold.
Yep.
We put a cap on that. We don't think it's really healthy to have that actually scale infinitely. It'll still get a little high, but it's not going to go to infinity. We've taken a pass on the materials, the crafting materials, things like ore and herbs, and some of the other crafting materials in the game. And a lot of the ones we had some variety of like common herbs, so that were found in different zones, and there was some nice flavor there, but ultimately they didn't really provide much compelling gameplay. So we've consolidated all of like the common crafting materials into just a single type, just basically common herbs. And then there are still some rare ones to find to craft the most powerful elixirs and so on. But we've simplified that system so your collection is a little bit easier and more streamlined.
Yeah, we also removed things like there's like a lot of monster parts like Pale Tongue and things like that have been removed as part of this experience. It's going to make it a lot easier to craft elixirs in this new world.
Absolutely.
Okay, you don't have to scroll through that tab so long to see exactly what material you want to craft with. Yeah.
Especially when they ultimately just fed towards that same goal.
Pretty gnarly.
And then the final update we've got is updates to the Forgotten Souls, right? So the late game crafting material that you use for a lot of the enchanting or other crafting systems.
Only had to get in Helltides.
We're making them a little bit more accessible. They'll come from Whispers of the Dead caches. And they can also rarely drop globally from any elite in the game. And this is a really cool moment that you kind of have this jackpot moment. It's
before you had to do Helltides to get them.
There's a moment where you just get like this explosion of loot, and it spits out a ton of the Forgotten Souls or other loot or other crafting materials. And that's a really exciting moment when you encounter it in game. It's pretty rare, but you kind of hit the jackpot when that does happen.
And for Forgotten Souls, that can happen outside of Helltide, right?
Oh yeah, that can happen on literally any elite in the
now.
game.
It wasn't before, though.
Also, we're looking at updating our uniques. So unique items are, these really build-defining, flashy, unique items, right? They are very powerful. Currently, they're locked behind just World Tier 3 and onward. They're really late-game items. And we thought that to really get you into the fun faster, to get your build online, We've made it so that many of our uniques in the game can now start dropping in World Tiers 1 and 2, so you can start getting them earlier on in the experience and really get your build going much quicker.
I don't know how I feel about uniques
and then once you
World
do
Tier
get into
1
World Tier
and
3,
2.
then all of the uniques in the game have the potential to start dropping, including Uber uniques, which are typically those very
I guess
late
at the
game
item
chase
level
items.
and the unique is
There is
lower,
a chance
so you have
that
to
monsters
refarm
starting
it.
at level 55
Either way, once
drop
you get to the
these
higher
Uber
levels,
uniques.
that makes
It's a pretty
sense.
small chance.
Okay.
It's very rare. But it's one of those moments that you're going to find.
Because you could get like a
if you're really
unique
lucky, you
in
might
World Tier
find
1, let's say,
Harlequin's Crest.
with like a 300 item level, 325
you
or something
definitely
like
will,
that.
right? And of course they'll drop.
I was gonna say, kind of going back to our goals of the itemization update in general, is that like at any time something really exciting can happen, right? That's the main impetus for doing this, is that even early on in the game, you can get the main thing that you're looking for. It's going to be very rare, not very common, but it's possible. And even some of our other updates coming that you're going to explain is kind of going along that vein, right?
Absolutely, yeah. We want you to have the chance to really have that high roll moment, a really exciting moment when you find that awesome loot. So that covers the additional updates. We've got to talk about the Codex of Power. Right, so the Codex of Power is a system that has been in the game since launch.
I hope the affixes update in the Codex
We're
if
making
you find
a big
new
update
one,
here where now
instead of
all
having to hold
legendary
on to
aspects
so
of the
many.
game will start appearing in the Codex of Power. Every single one. Previously it was just a small
Thank you.
subset. And I
That's a
believe we even
W.
have some in-game footage that we can talk and go through an example of what this looks like.
Yeah, we'll jump over to it. We have behind the scenes, we actually have Ruben,
Because before,
Bloodshed,
there
former
are certain
content creator,
affixes
now part
you could
of,
only find from
the
drops.
Blizzard team here on Diablo. He's actually driving us
So I feel like
through-
once you
through
find
our
it,
builds
should
here,
be in the
but
Codex
he
of
will
Power,
be,
which it
driving
is.
through all our little demos
Well,
that
no,
we have today.
because
So,
if you imprinted
Awesome.
before,
Yeah, so you can see
it
in
didn't
our
store it in the
inventory
Codex.
right now, we've
You
got
had to find
Edgemaster's Siege Bow.
another one.
And this has a little icon on it in the upper right in your inventory
Upgrade
there. And that
aspect.
indicates
Thank you.
that if you salvage this legendary,
W.
it will upgrade an aspect in the Codex of Power when you salvage it.
That's right. So you
Huge.
no longer need to go to the occultist to extract aspects in
Correct.
any way, because aspect crystals
Oh,
are
that's
no longer a thing in this
huge.
new version of the Codex of Power.
Yeah, aspect crystals
D4
are
good.
gone. It's just when you salvage the legendary, it will upgrade it. So we salvage it, we can see that Edgemaster's aspect has been upgraded in the Codex of Power.
Oh, so you don't even
So we
have
go
it;
to
just
our
does
Codex
it
of Power, and
automatically.
let's go take a look.
When you salvage
So we've
it,
got
so you
Edgemaster's
get
aspect here. That skills deal up
Like
to
the
6%
materials for
increased damage
salvaging?
based on your available resource when cast. So that is the kind
Bet.
of legendary rank of the one that we just salvaged. Now this says 6% here. In game it was 12% because it was on a two-handed bow, and that doubles the range. But you can see it's not a minimum roll. Right now on live Diablo 4, it's always just a minimum roll, and so once you find something better, a better aspect crystal, the Codex is kind of irrelevant. Now the Codex will continue being relevant because every time you find a higher roll of it, it's going to upgrade your Codex, and you can continually re-imprint this legendary power onto any gear that you find going forward.
That's right. So if Ruben finds a 10%,
So I guess that's a good way to know, because if you pick up gear and it has the upgrade icon, you'll know that it's
that 10%
stronger than
version
what's
is now
in the
gonna replace
Codex, so you can
6%
just salvage
version he has
it.
right
Yep.
now. And that's
That's
the new
cool, so you
version
don't
it
have to
has.
keep
When we're
going to the
talking about
Codex
upgrading,
to
what we really
check.
mean is, like, as you find the better versions of these aspects, they replace the older ones. Now, every time you decide you want to imprint the Codex of Power, that's going to be the version that you get from that point forward.
So if you find a max roll the first time, are you just super lucky? You have it forever?
You are super lucky, and you would have that forever. Yes,
Cool.
you can continually imprint it. However, the ranks of
that's gonna make it
legendaries,
so
you won't
much-
be able to find a max roll
like, the
of these
quality of
legendaries
life
in
is gonna
World
be
Tiers 1 and
huge
2
for that.
when you're just starting out your journey. We have extended the
managing
range,
affixes
so a lot
was-
of legendaries used
oh,
to
it was
say,
so annoying.
hypothetically, if a legendary rolled between 20% and 30%, now we've extended that range from 20 to 35%. But those like 30 to 35%, the highest range, the most powerful versions, those are only going to be accessible in World Tier 4 in the later games. So this does give you a bit more of progression. So you can find it early and you can upgrade it, but then you're going to find even better versions as you progress through the World Tiers.
And if we actually, can we go back to the build really quickly? Because, Ruben, if you can pull
Bring up
up
that
the Codex of
again.
Power really quickly.
Show the UI a little
just to
bit
show the
here.
UI.
Yeah.
Because one big thing is like there, I know we glazed over this really quickly, but there are filters, ways of searching through everything, which is really nice. And then, of course, on the icons as well, I think people are probably seeing these numbers associated. I know it's something that is changed obviously with this new Codex of Power, where it's showcasing like, hey, there's a gold-rin version of Aspect of Quickening Fog right there, which is already showcasing, hey, you have it completely maxed at 16 out of 16. And of course, there's different ranks as you're kind of like leveling up throughout the Codex Power and finding different aspects of it.
Yeah, I really love that gold border to really indicate that, hey, you found the best version, you've kind of completed this. And some of them, you kind of cheat on it, right? Things that only have one rank. As soon as you unlock it, you get the best version.
Yeah, that's an example of one that you could max out in World Tier 1.
You probably could, right? But most of them have now, up to 16 ranks is kind of our standard, for the most part. And those highest ranks are just going to be in the later world tiers.
And for a lot of these aspects too, when we went to 16 ranks on these, we actually extended the value, the power of these, and potency of these aspects upwards. Right? We didn't water it down. We actually extended it up.
Yeah, for the most part, these have increased in power at the highest level, just to make them really rewarding.
Crazy how there's 16 versions of each
I'm sure there's
affix.
people asking
No wonder it's
about,
hard to find.
Hey, is this a seasonal thing? Is this
good
an
like top
thing?
ones before? There's
this
I
is
didn't think there were
everywhere
that many variants.
This is the new world.
This is the new world.
That's right. All the updates we're talking about today,
Correct.
once again, are for the Eternal Realm and for the Seasonal Realm. These are not seasonal updates only.
Yeah. They're coming with Season 4, but they are applying to the whole game.
And I do want to note, like, Codex of Power with seasonal characters, of course, will end up change. Like every single time there's a new season, it does.
The same way that it does today.
But eternal characters, will just happen
You can
forever.
actually fill it out
Eternally.
forever,
Yes.
Eternally.
Of course.
There you go.
All right, so that was a ton on the systems that already exist in the game, right? The base item affixes, the other updates, and Codex of Power. But there's also new systems coming.
We're not done with optimization.
That was updates to existing things, but we have got a lot of new stuff. So let's talk about tempering. Tempering is a new crafting system that will allow you to add really cool new affixes to your items. And so I really just want to highlight that this
before
is
you can only
not just
re-roll
taking
what was
those,
on there,
those
and only
really
one of them.
conditional nitty-gritty aspects or affixes. This also includes a lot of really new exciting affixes as well that we'll showcase a bit later. Things like a chance to cast bonus projectiles, increased effect size of your skills, and other ways of talking directly to individual skills. A lot
increased
of this lives
projectiles
in
could be interesting.
And so this way you can really customize your character, specifically to your build and the skills that you're using and the way you want to play. So you might be asking, well, how do we temper? We've got tempering manuals. So these are manuals that are going to drop from most content in the game. This isn't something you need to go target farm. You're just going to find these as you're playing. And these manuals are going to be a list of possible affixes that are kind of themed to individual builds. So if you are a bone necro,
kind of like
for
crafting
instance,
guides in PoE. I feel like
the manual for bone necro might have things specifically to bone spear and bone splinters
or
and
recipes.
Bone spirit.
Is what I'm thinking of.
When you do the tempering, which is done at the blacksmith, it will attach a random one of the affixes from that manual onto the item that you're tempering. And if you don't get the exact one that you want, or you don't get the roll that you want, you can re-roll these affixes up to the item's tempering durability. Now, this is a lot without an example, so I think we've got an example where we can just
let's show
walk
people
through,
what it looks
right?
like.
So here's some screenshot examples of the actual recipes that appear. So on the left, we've got the Manual of Natural Motion. This is a generic recipe that really applies to any class. It's got a variety of movement speed options on it. So you've got, you might just attach movement speed to your gear. Maybe you get a higher value of movement speed, but only after you kill an elite. We have the option to reduce your evade cooldown or give you mobility skill cooldown reduction. We've tagged a lot of skills in the game with mobility tag when, things like teleport or charge. And then on the right, we've got one that is more specific to necromancers, because this is the bone necro one that I mentioned before. So we've got a chance for bone splinter projectiles to cast twice, chance for bone spear projectiles to cast twice, increase the size of your bone spirit explosion,
That's very cool.
or increase the duration of your bone storm. So if you're a bone necro, one of these is probably going to be pretty relevant to you and will be really a cool way of customizing your character and your skills.
Explosion size would be pretty cool.
So here's an example of the UI. So on the left, we've got this Choker of Ancestral Charge, one of my favorite legendaries, currently on Season 3. And so it's got the relatively simpler affixes. It's got just max life, damage, and critical strike chance. And we go to the blacksmith, we put it into the menu here, and we can see that there are kind of 6 categories, with 5 of them being highlighted. These categories are the categories of recipes. So each recipe corresponds to one of these categories. And on amulets, you can put anything except the weapons category. So that's why offensive, defensive, utility, mobility, and resource are all highlighted here. And once we go through this, we can do this twice because most items can only be tempered once. You can get just one affix on them. But ancestral items, these really late game World Tier 4 items, can be tempered twice from 2 separate categories. So you can't put, say, 2 defensive ones on there. You're going to diversify. And in this case, we've got charge cooldown reduction added on the right. And we've also got some bonus damage while berserking. So we've got an offensive one here. And then we've got a utility one that gives us the cooldown reduction. Do we have a live example of this, of going through this actual flow, so we can kind of show you what this ends up looking like?
Yep. Once again, yep, that's right there.
Look.
Points at the blacksmith.
Yes.
All right,
So in here
see
we've
what this looks
got
like.
our bow of branching volleys. We can put it in here because this is a weapon. We can attach ones from the offensive category, and so here's all the examples. We've got 5 different recipes that we've unlocked here, depending on how we want to build our character. So if we want to do, say, marksman skills to put on there, we can do marksman finesse, and this will give us either bonus marksman damage. Why don't we just temper it and see what it looks like? So we get this flashy animation that comes in, and we get
the animation kind of reminds me of honing.
Added 29% marksman damage. Right?
Actually worked out quite nicely, yeah.
What am I thinking of?
That's awesome. So
Not scripted, by the way.
Definitely not scripted. So yeah.
Actually, it
God,
wasn't.
I can't think
It
of it
actually
right now.
You were actually plugging, but
What is the game that you do honing
in? The
in?
grips of RNG.
Yeah.
One thing I want to call out also while we're looking at
I'm about
this
to
is
open
that,
Steam and
we
look.
are
And that's gonna
in
drive me
the
nuts.
season 4 update, or this PTR update that we're talking about right now. This is our first PTR update. There's
Jesus,
a lot of
those
changes
drive me
we have
nuts.
going in, and there's some things that are going to be are kind of in the middle of being polished now, or kind of getting wrapped up for some things in dev. So there's going to be some things that players will see on the PTR. They're going to feel like, oh, this is like not quite like what I expect, or there's like they might find bugs and things.
Yep.
That's kind of the nature of the PTR experience.
Yeah.
We want you to report those, like Adam called out a little bit earlier, and give us your feedback on the experience.
Yeah, that's actually a really good reminder, because I think a lot of people haven't experienced PTR, especially if you're like kind of new to Diablo and you do jump in. PTRs will have bugs. It is
that's the point of it.
the build.
Yeah,
so there will be bugs, polished things that won't be incorporated. So yes, provide feedback on all those things so that we can actually hear those and make changes for those.
But if we throw back to Ruben real quick, the thing I wanted to point out was like when the masterwork, when the tempering process went through, so you got 28% for the that marksman damage, but the item itself got a slightly different number. There's just a bug that we've identified that we're in the middle of fixing right now.
Right, that's just a display bug, but this is one of the things that we're working on, we're aware of, and going to polish up, because that's the nature of game development.
Just for the eagle-eyed among the viewers.
Yes.
Yeah, this is a thing.
All right, so a few other things to call out here. Let's actually close this menu and then take a look at when it's in there. We can talk about tempering durability a little bit. So you can see when this is in here, we've got tempered affixes, 1 out of 2. Because this is an ancestral item, you can temper it twice from 2 different categories. So you're going to be able to put 1 weapon and 1 offensive on there. And then there's this tempering durability remaining. So this is how many times you can re-roll the tempered affixes. The first ones that you attach should not be consuming tempering durability. I think this one might have one of those bugs where it did consume it, but ultimately this is going to be the number of times you can re-roll.
Yeah, we're actually going to update the string. I think it's going to literally be called.
I mean, even if it's 4, that's still pretty low, unless the affix pool.
This is the kind of things that we're actually working on, and we love your feedback on to make sure that we can get this right and really communicate the way the system works. So we've attached an offensive affix onto this. Let's take a look at some of the weapon ones that we can attach on. So here we've got ones that not great.
Live build.
Yeah, live build indeed.
Live build.
Well, so we can talk through what would have happened there.
Yeah.
Right. So when you attach the weapon category, those are often the ones that are the more I would say more interesting, right? The bonus projectiles, the bonus effect size.
Yeah, that was the weapon category that had a chance to create different, like multiple bone splinters, or twice rather.
Yeah. That's in the weapon category. So there we would attach one of those. Maybe we'd get a chance for rapid fire projectiles to fire an extra time. And then when we do that, maybe, we actually want to play a penetrating shot build, right? Maybe rapid fire is not that great. We could consume one of the tempering durabilities to re-roll that and try to get that bonus rapid fire projectile ones that we want.
At least people now believe it's live.
Do people still think we weren't doing it live?
Looking at it.
Well, the questions were screened before is
getting
what
the
they were
build back
talking
up here
about.
and everything. But
There's a lot of really cool
So your game
affixes
crashed
in general
IRL?
inside the
Rip.
tempering system. Like I know that, like I've been playing a lot of Season 4, like on our dev build, and I'm playing a Barbarian right now. And I've been playing a lot with Dust Devils, which I know we'll talk maybe a little bit more about
we're
later.
gonna talk about Dust Devils.
But there's like opportunities to like spawn, like instead of spawning one Dust Devil, you'll spawn multiple Dust Devils. There's Dust Devil size. There's a lot of really and duration. Like there's a lot of really neat new things to play with to build upon other like playstyles, which I think is really fun.
Yeah. That's really the goal of tempering is customization and really cool new ways of building your character. That's not just plus damage. There is still some bonus damage as you still need to in order to actually do damage, but there's a lot of ways you can customize your skills and make it really your own.
Now, right now, you can temper legendary items.
Correct.
And rare items, but you can't temper unique items.
Correct. Unique items, kind of what you see is what you get, right? They drop still with the 4 affixes for the most part. Those are going to be unchanged. You won't be able to temper onto them.
With tempering, yeah.
With tempering, right.
And then we show the tempering durability, as part or tempering rerolls in this case. So the idea here is that like when the player has you're not happy with all the affixes you've got, you've kind of rerolled through all of your options. At the end of that process, you simply can't temper any longer on that item. There's not a way to reset that item back down. One of the goals that we have for ourselves in terms of like trying to have higher quality drops in general is to make it so it's a little bit easier, and also ensuring like it's easier for you to reach those 925 capped items when you start to really deeply engage in features like this. Is you want to make it a little bit easier for you to go find some of those really good baseline templated items for you to start building on top of, as opposed to having it be like, I need to find like 70 helmets in the hopes I find a max roll cooldown reduction on it, right? Like
that makes
we're
more
in a different
sense
place now in terms of how we're thinking about that. In addition to the crafting, the trading changes that we've made as well. I want to make it a little bit easier for you to find some of these things, between it being a lot easier to have drops that are relevant for you appear when you're doing various types of content, but also that if you're playing with friends, there's opportunities for you to maybe trade some things around at the same time.
Yeah, I think you make a really good point about finding really strong base items to build off of. And I think that goes great into our next point where we talk about greater affixes. So greater affixes are affixes that appear in the late game. They are more powerful versions of the normal affixes. So they come at a 1.5x
So I wonder if you can temper these on top of.
So let's say a hypothetical
like
affix might come between like 50 to 100 of a stat.
On one
item. If it
item.
rolls greater, then you actually get 150 of that stat instead. Instead of the roll, it always comes in at max. So it comes in at that 150 mark. These are really exciting drops when you get into the late game. They're going to be immediately obvious whenever they drop on the ground. They're going to have a little change to the UI, so you can see it right away, and you know, hey, that one has great affixes on it.
Probably going to be like a different color.
And that's going to be ones that you're really going to want to pick up and make sure that you take a look at.
Everything.
And then you really want to build off of, because they're some of the strongest affixes in the game. I think we've got an example here. And one other note, these, as I mentioned, they're late game. They only appear on Ancestral Legendary items and Ancestral Uniques that are dropping in World Tier 4. I think we can zoom in on the top one here, where we can see we've got a little, like some Roman numerals at the end of it.
I wonder if that means it's got 2
this
tempering
pair of gloves
chances.
has 2 greater affixes on it.
Oh,
and
2
when you actually
greater
go and pick it up,
affixes.
we can take a look at the tooltip of the item itself. And we can see that intelligence here is highlighted, and so is critical strike damage. And these roll at the max roll, and I think we've got a comparison kind of between a standard version. So on the left is a non-greater version of a dagger. You've got, say, 74 dexterity, and maybe it rolls between 70 and 84. But on the right, we've got a greater version of dexterity, and that's going to always give you 126, which is 1.5 times the 84. Same with the critical strike damage down at the bottom. So if you find the dagger on the right, that's a really good one. I mean, not only do you have 2 greater affixes, you also max roll the attack speed in between. That is a great base item to start building
I'm
through the
still
tempering
confused.
system.
Can you re-roll it then?
Thing we've got.
Or I guess you wouldn't want to if it's already maxed each time.
Masterworking is a late game crafting system that we're going to use to upgrade the items. So once you kind of find a really good base item, maybe it has some greater affixes on it, and then you've tempered on the affixes that you want. Hey, you've found the exact affixes that are specific to your build that you've attached onto it. Now you're really pushing into that late game content. It's time to start Masterworking. And Masterworking has 12 ranks where you can upgrade the current affixes on your gear. So this isn't going to change any of the affixes like enchanting or like tempering does. This is just going to take the current ones and then upgrade them through 12 ranks.
This is kind of like the old gear upgrade, right?
Similar, yes. However, both Masterworking and tempering are replacing the old gear upgrade system. The previous system, where you just kind of upgraded the item power and the values went up by a bit. These two systems replace that, and now you're going to be able to customize them and then masterwork them instead.
It's significantly more powerful on the back end of this as well after these things are done. Compared to item upgrade,
Absolutely. So the 12 ranks of Masterworking, as opposed to the 5 of the old system, most of the ranks are going to increase all of your affixes on the gear by a small amount. But then every 4 ranks, so rank 4, 8, and 12, are going to upgrade a single affix by a large amount. So here's an example. The ring on the left is rank 2 Masterworking. You can see that right up there by the item power. It says Masterworking 2 out of 12. Let's focus in on like the maximum life affix there. So on the left at rank 2, you see we've got 880 bonus maximum life. And so we take it, we masterwork it up to rank 3, and then that will upgrade that to 920 maximum life. So a little bit of an improvement. But then once we hit rank 4, we actually get a much larger increase in maximum life. It goes from 920 all the way up to 1,120, while the other affixes on the gear stay static because they didn't roll randomly because we're only hitting 1. To Joe's point earlier about we still have some in development. This is in development content. It's not final, as the watermark says. The tempered affixes at the bottom, the Golem active cooldown reduction and the Bone critical strike damage, those also would be being upgraded and are eligible to have this this larger bonus. But in this particular
so is it just randomly
example, those numbers didn't change, but they will change in the final.
And those will also be affected,
Yeah, they will be included just like all of the rest of them. But yeah, so
if it's random, that's going to suck.
Because of these effects.
If it just chooses a random one, then you're screwed.
And they can all go on the same one.
Because then it's just stuck with that affix.
So if you get really lucky and you really needed a lot of maximum life, you might get just a ton of maximum life every time that increases. Or it could be on one of your tempered affixes. You could get tons of Golem cooldown reduction if that's the kind of build that you're looking for. And once you fully
the RNG would be nuts.
If it didn't really pan out the way you wanted to, the random rolls didn't quite go your way, you are able to reset it and try it again, but you will kind of lose all the materials that you've invested into it, but you can try that again. It doesn't completely lock you out of it.
Right, so once you've got like a really great pair of gloves or whatever that you've tempered at this point, you've enchanted to get exactly the affix you wanted off it, maybe you got some greater affixes on it in the first place when you started. Then you take that item into, assuming you got through all that process, you can take it into the masterworking feature, and then you can kind of keep going at it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and get the opportunity to kind of hopefully crit exactly.
Well, when he says keep going at it, I'm wondering if that means
you do get that
is it going to pick a new affix each time?
Critical strike damage,
and you can happen to get the same one twice.
Upgraded. That's going to be
so
like one of the best items in the game that probably no one else
can,
has one exactly
it just randomly
like
chooses
that because you
the
really
affix
needed
each time that it is
the right
upgrading.
one every time.
That's what I'm guessing.
Going to be a really powerful item that is going to be very memorable when you get all that coming together. I think we've got an example here to really highlight all of these systems taken together. So on before, this was that boned one restoration that we talked about right at the beginning when we talked about paring down the affix list to just more simple intelligence, damage, and vulnerable damage. And on the right, we can see it after it has been tempered. So we've got bone spirit damage. We've got chance for a bone splinter projectiles to cast twice. And then we can see intelligence has been highlighted in blue. That means it's had one of the upgrades from Masterworking, and the damage stat on here has been upgraded twice. That's why it's in yellow.
Okay.
When we got up to Masterworking 12, and you can see how we've taken this progression.
So wait, it's Masterworking 12, but
so
intelligence is once.
All the way up to Masterworking 12.
Damage
this is really
twice?
kind of the pinnacle of what
so
items
what got
can
upgraded
be in our new itemization
in the other
world.
10 levels.
So one thing I want to highlight here is that the total depth of what an item can do and the complexity. You can still make an item do a lot of different things, but on that before side, when you're looking for items that are dropping, that's all that you're going to parse through over there. It's just like 3 affixes. Did I get the ones I want? And you can just do that very quickly and parse through a lot of items that way. But you're going to be slowly, introducing that complexity over time to your items as you upgrade and masterwork them. So you're going to be building the items that you really want to be using.
Absolutely.
In terms of like lucking out on this, I think it's fun to call out like it is basically 5% upgrades to your affixes during the regular masterworking process. And then there's 3 randomly selected 25% upgrades to one of those affixes. So if you're very, very fortunate and you manage to triple up on a particular stat, you can do the math. It's a tremendous, tremendous upgrade for that affix overall.
And if you want to go hard into one affix,
I'm still confused by this because they said that one was masterwork
really
12
hard
out of
CDR
12
in this world, right?
I'm terrified.
And only 2 of the affixes are updated.
Hard into CDR, yes.
Or really hard on bonus projectiles, because those are cool and flashy.
Or bonus projectiles, that's actually true,
It's going to be really sweet.
It's bone spears everywhere.
Absolutely. But, of course, you might be asking, okay, new items are great. Well, what am I going to do with all of these new items?
Before we even bridge to me, okay, this is a really good bridge. So 2 things I want to call out. One, masterworking works on unique items.
Correct.
Yes. So some of those really, really cool affixes that can appear on unique items. Not the power of the unique item, but a lot of like the really specific unique affixes. Those all benefit from the masterworking process as well, which are really significant.
That's huge though, because uniques.
So I think
that was
there's something really, really fun there.
You kept having to farm.
You can make sure that
to find
when
one that had
some of these unique items are dropping, they also can have greater affixes attached to them. So those same unique affixes that we're talking about, like that is huge. Like now you get an extra 50% value on top of that.
Yeah.
So you get 50% value on top of the unique item affix, and then on top of that you masterwork it. It can get really, really bonkers. So there's a good chase involved in this. But even allowing for player trading and everything else, there's still lots of really exciting stuff for players to find.
Yeah, and the other thing I've seen a little bit of this in chat as well as a lot of people are going hey, when are we actually able to experience this?
PTR.
PTR. Well, first PTR, and also at the same time, this is something that does start immediately with season 4 when it begins.
Yes.
This is all the all the itemization changes will start with the start of season 4, because I know a lot of people were questioning because they're going well, we had heard Gauntlet in the past, and then Gauntlet actually started mid-season. The itemization changes and all the changes you're hearing today will start right at the beginning of season 4, which is on May 14th. PTR being on April 2nd. So.
There's a couple other things I also want to say. It doesn't fit
neatly.
I
got one too.
Oh, do you? Oh, no, you go first. You go first.
All right, I want to clarify something because I know it's going to be a lot of questions that people have on greater affixes.
Yes.
So greater affixes, the way that you get them is you can only get them from things that drop. So you're actually looking for that moment when you kill the mob, kill the enemy, the loot drops. That's the exciting moment that we're targeting. Enchanting is still going to exist. You can still enchant your affixes like normal on those 3 ones that drop. You cannot enchant into a greater affix. You can enchant out of a greater affix. So if you choose to, if you've got a 1 greater affix item, you can enchant that greater affix to something else, but it won't change to another greater, and you can't change anything into a greater. It's all about killing monsters, finding that moment that is really exciting when the item drops, seeing if
so you can re-roll the greater affix into another
how enchanting works,
stat, but you still only have 1 greater affix.
Focusing on the drop
is what I'm kind of
following. The moment of excitement that we're going for there.
Right, and then one thing I want to call out as well that we did talk about
you won't
already,
have the 2 or more greater affixes.
A lot of other changes that we haven't actually discussed here that you'll see when we get to play in the PTR. But one of them I think is really cool is we actually add a bunch of other new baseline rare affixes that can appear on items that players haven't seen before.
Yes.
So there's as an example of a few of these, we have Fury per second. Can appear on items, which is very, very exciting and very interesting for my barbarian friends. It's very transformative. There's a number of other ones like life per hit. Is now
Fury per second would be huge. You don't have to keep using a generator anymore.
Or kind of cool,
and also ones that are cool and powerful that appear on different slots. So previously, weapons almost always had bonus damage of some sort. We've extended that, so a lot of weapons can now have resource cost reduction. They can have bonus attack speed and other things that increase your output through not just saying damage to a certain way. More interesting ways of increasing your output.
Yeah, very cool.
To me, bonus projectiles, that's just the most popular. I'm terrified of it. It's so cool, though, but it's going to be
really cool.
Having
depending on how the bonus
and then have that
projectiles plays out,
and then
bonus spear
and then you masterwork bonus projectiles,
super
it gets silly.
Yeah.
I know we want to talk about some end game stuff that's coming to the game. Actually, maybe we leave that for the end of the stream itself, right before we go into Q&A. Is there? I'm going to ask production here. I'm going to pivot them. Is there a way that we can jump to class changes coming? To
me next.
Yeah, you next. I'm pivoting.
We got kind of a shrug, so I think so.
Yeah, we'll go through the end game stuff here because we do have a lot of additional things that we still need to talk about that even pair with this itemization, these itemization changes. But we'll jump into class changes really quickly. And
sure, we can go to me next. That's fine.
Let's do it. Take us away, Adam.
All right.
I don't know what they'd be changing.
Are we ready to go?
Because we're not getting a new class yet.
So we've got kind of 3 big goals for class updates. We've got a lot going on. I'm going to try and breeze through a little quick in the interest of time. The first one is going through a very high volume of meaningful class updates. And what I mean by meaningful is, not just moving numbers up and down on things that exist, but kind of either updating systems of how things interact at a systemic level,
skill trees,
or
hopefully.
adding things that are really, really powerful and are actually going to move the needle and change how you interact with the class or the skill or the legendary or whatever we're changing. Next one is making flat damage effects more viable. So by flat damage, I'm talking about things like dust devils, earthquakes, dancing bolts, all these things. I talked a few campfire chats ago about how I wanted to make these things like a lot more viable and scale better, and we're going to be making good on that in Season 4. I'm excited we'll go into more details, but yeah, that's one of the big things that's changing this season. And last but not least, opening up designs to be more generally useful. So kind of similar to item affixes, how you've got these like multi-conditional things. We're going through classes across the board and going and looking for ways that we can open up things. So you're going to find that things that were a little more restrictive, we're going to try and interact with more different pieces. So something may have only talked to core skills, now it can be any skill, things like that. Where we're trying to make things less conditional so that you can mix and match things a lot more often. So, yeah, in addition to those 3 things, those are our goals. I'm also going to be talking a little bit today about PTR balance and hardcore updates. And little PSA, everything that you see here right now, the tuning is still in flux. We're going through the balancing process right now of these things. So any exact numbers that you see of updates is very much subject to change, not only before PTR, but of course one of our goals for you playing PTR is helping us with the tuning and balance because everything is going to be changing. So expect things to change, but that's kind of where we're at right now. So first, let's talk about uniques. So in Season 4, you're going to be getting double the normal amount of uniques added to the game. Normally, every class gets 1. Every class is going to be getting 2 this time. So again, more content. We're also adding a new Uber unique here, Tyrael's Might. This is a defensive-oriented unique. It's going to be a chest piece. So you can see the stats there. Lots of resistance-oriented things and damage reduction. By the way, in this new world, damage reduction is going to be much harder to come by. So it's actually a lot more special that it exists here. And the special power of this is that when you're at maximum life, so when you have the entire life bar full, you're going to be shooting out projectiles very similar to the artillery shrine. So you can see here kind of in action, you can see that sometimes he's attacking and it's not going off. And then as he heals up, you get those bolts that's hitting enemies. It's really, really flashy and cool. So yeah, class updates. Like I mentioned before, we're really looking to move the needle on these. We are still going to be having a number of changes, quite a few of just things going up and down for tuning. But we're also looking at updating some systems and designs. And I'm going to give you some examples. Now, everything I talk about here today, I'm giving you a small snippet of the things that we're doing, like 1 or 2 examples per class. But when you get the patch notes, you're going to see it's like a giant wall. There's a lot of stuff that we're doing everywhere.
Just a slice of the overall pie.
Yeah. So, some examples here. Skill tag updates. So, we're not only doing this on the Sorceress, but on other classes as well, but this is the one example I want to give. One of the pain points that Sorceress has always had is that they have kind of core skills and then mastery skills. Mastery skills are things like Firewall, Meteor, things like that. And the mastery skills, we're always kind of second class to the core skills because we had a lot of things that scaled core skill damage, but not mastery skill damage. So, we've updated our skill tags and kind of change things around so that they make more sense. So you're going to see more skill tags added to things across the board. And the example here is that mastery skills will also just have the core skill tag. They'll be considered both mastery and core skill. So all your core skill damage bonuses, interactions, all that stuff will just work now. Did you have something?
Yeah, we also talked about like mobility skill tag added to a lot of skills as well, and how that interacts with the tempering system. You have ways of getting mobility skill cooldown reduction that ties into the same concept.
We're actually adding the mobility skill tag to all things across all classes that have mobility attached to them, so then they can interact with the itemization system, and you'll have these things working in tandem together. That's a good point. Yeah, so now some other examples. Frozen Orb on the Sorceress is getting a lot of love. Before, when you cast it, it would go an exact set distance and then blow up, but now it's going to go exactly where you point it at it to with your cursor. So, you know, you're not going to hit your life if you run into like a suppressor elite, for example. You can actually make it fire point blank or all the way across the screen. And we'll actually be showing some video of that as well later. We also have a new unique that we're going to have video of that's really awesome. So Frozen Orb Sorceresses are going to be really happy this season. And next, Necromancer. I've been talking for a while about Necromancer minions and how we're going to make them better. We're delivering on that in Season 4. The first change is that they're going to inherit 100% of the player's stats.
Boy.
So, you know, your crit chance, crit damage, all those things, they're just going to inherit it from you. So they're going to scale way better with you, the player. And this is not only going to apply to Necromancer minions, but all minion types in our game. Things like Druid Wolves are also going to be inheriting this, and you're going to get a pretty big power bump. We're also looking. We took a look at the Book of the Dead, and basically revamped everything. All of the upgrades almost are getting some type of either number or big functionality change, and I'm going to be going through some examples there. But it's just going to be a lot more punchy. We're not only looking for effectiveness here, like making things stronger, but we also like the rule of cool, where you know the things that are awesome and look cool and are visual are going to stand out more, and so we're trying to do that as much as we can. So next, let's talk about game balance. So as I kind of alluded to earlier, you know, the landscape of everything is changing pretty drastically, right? Itemization is going to be changing a lot of how player power works and how things work in the game. We've got a lot of class updates that are going to be changing how things are. You can expect a pretty big shakeup of like just how all the different classes and builds perform. Like it's going to be a brave new world really here. But, you know, normally we promised a while back that we're going to do lists of everything that's perceived as a nerf. I'm not going to be going through every single thing today. You'll be able to see everything in the patch notes on the PTR, and that's mostly in the interest of time, just because there's so much change that's happening. But I am going to give you, a snippet to do good on that promise of kind of how the game is now, and some things that you can expect that are going to be lowered in power in the future. So some examples here. Generally, Tybalt's Will, everyone's favorite pants, right? And not only is it really good because the effect is good, but also it's damage on pants, which makes it really, really good. That damage amount is being reduced. Same with Banished Lord's Talesman. Both of these uniques are insanely powerful. They're still going to be really good after this, but the damage is just being lowered so that other things can be competitive. Next, the Barbarian, everybody's favorite charging class. First thing that we're doing is, many of you may not know this, but when we launched the game, we actually gave them 10% inherent damage reduction. This was back when melee classes in general and the Barbarian were having trouble in the early game. Our game balance has changed radically since then, and we don't feel like they really need this anymore. And we don't want them to have an inherent advantage over all the other classes in the game anymore. So that's going to be removed. And even like I mentioned before when Charles was talking, damage reduction in general is going to be much more rare and special. You're not just going to find it on any defensive stat. When you see it, it's going to be something that you're going to really value because it's hard to come by. And we also think Barbarians are still going to be really good in this regard because their skill tree has a lot of it. Their skills like Challenging Shout have it. So I think they're going to be fine, but we're just removing this extra part. Also, we're reducing the effectiveness of Charge, Hammer of the Ancients, and Unbridled Rage. All three of these things have been incredibly powerful. Some things like Unbridled Rage have kind of been stamping out competing things for a long time just because it's so good. Our goal here is not to remove these from the game or make these builds not viable at all. They're going to be reduced, but I still think they're going to be really powerful and effective.
Yeah, the Hoda.
And next we're going to go over to the Sorcerer. We got a couple bug fixes here. We have more bug fixes than this, but this is just some that I wanted to call out. The first one, we had one where the evade cooldown reduction affix was triggering off of unstable currents casts. And so what this basically meant was you equip those boots to have evade cooldown reduction, and then you use unstable currents, and you had like infinite uptime on teleport evades, which made you just teleport around forever. This has been fixed, so now it's only going to work with intentional casts now, as it was intended to. And the next one is Isu's Ferocity. This is a key passive on the Sorcerer that used to apply its critical strike damage to all damage types, but it was the fire key passive. Now it's only going to apply to fire damage as it was intended to. And again, this is just a snippet of everything, but there's going to be a lot more stuff. And again, like everything you know is basically going to change because of how many things are being updated in the game.
Yeah, once the patch notes get released,
any specific build.
We'll just have to go down the whole list of changes.
All right, so now let's get to the fun part, class updates. So I'm going to be going through all the different classes here and just showing like 1 to 2 examples of kind of the ideas of things that we're changing. Again, lots more than what you're going to see, but kind of giving you an idea of what to expect in the direction that we're going here. So first we'll start with the Barbarians. So I like Dust Devils. I've liked them for a long time, and not just things like Dust Devils, but all those types of extra affixes that spawn things. So here's an example of Wind Slasher. This is a legendary that we updated. So it's the Double Swing legendary that spawns Dust Devils. Before it was you would cast Double Swing twice, and you like go in and out and in and out, and every other time you'd make a Dust Devil, right? Pretty cool. We're updating this now, so every single time that you cast Double Swing, it does a Dust Devil. And instead of every other time spawning 1, every other time spawns 3. So now, instead of going hit, then 1, then hit, then 1, it's 1, then 3, really then 1, then 3, which means a lot more Dust Devils.
And I want to call it again, there's tempered affixes that give you chances to spawn additional Dust Devils when you spawn a Dust Devil. So.
And affixes that talk to them directly in itemization with tempering, like their size can go up, their damage can go up, like we're actually going to make this a thing.
I know I'm talking a lot about Dust Devils. There's cool stuff for all the classes.
It's Earthquakes,
it's just that I played a lot of Dust Devil bar during one season. So,
It's the example I tell our team. It's like always I say Earthquakes and Dust Devil. Like these things need to be cool, and all the ones like that.
Yeah, we totally nerfed bar.
Anyways, that's the bar. So there's not just this, lots of other legendaries are like this. Druid, for example, a thing that has been long complained about to me is that lacerate isn't up to par to other things. So there on the left is what you can see exists today, where the upgrades for lacerate are, the first one is you heal for a little bit for every hit, and then it's doubled when you crit. And then the next upgrade is that its initial strike crits and does a little bit more damage. We're just merging those together. So both of those combined is going to be your first lacerate upgrade. And now we added a second upgrade there where every time that lacerate crits, all of your shape-shifting skills are going to deal more damage for 10 seconds, up to 40%. So now we're adding a very strong, potent, multiplicative damage bonus buff after lacerate. So now, lacerate, it's going to give you invulnerability, life leech, crit, and then a potent damage buff for a while after you cast it. So then if you can get cooldown reduction on it, you can keep that buff rolling and actually have like a build going on. Next, the Sorceress. So here, instead of just text, I'm actually going to show you some videos. The first one is going to be showing that frozen orb change that we talked about here. So basically, you can see here that where the person is targeting with their cursor is where the frozen orb is going to explode.
So that's where it's going to stop.
So now you can make it point blank. You can make it far away. It's going to be wherever you go. And for you controller players, this is going to interact just like other skills where it just goes to an enemy, and then if there's nothing nearby, it just goes a set distance before blowing up. Next, we're going to be talking about the unique. So prefacing this unique a little bit before we show the video. The basic idea is conjurations are cool and frozen orb is cool. And what's going to happen with this unique is frozen orb is going to have a chance when it explodes to spawn conjurations. And then anytime that your conjurations attack, they have a chance to throw frozen orbs at enemies. So now we're going to see this in action here. So it's called Fractured Winter Glass. And this video is just the person casting frozen orb with this unique. So at first it's like, okay, it's fine. You see a couple conjurations, right? But then as you go on, you can see that the frozen orbs are making more of them, and then the conjurations are also throwing out more frozen orbs.
This is all just from pressing one button.
This is all just from throwing out frozen orbs.
Just been right-clicking this whole time.
Yeah, so it's like when I place a firewall, my firewall makes a meteor, and then my meteor makes a firewall.
Yes, but conjurations.
But conjurations, yeah.
So Hydra throwing frozen orbs.
Firewall meteor sounds cool too. Okay,
fair enough.
Got an idea.
Stay focused.
But yeah, so this is an example of one of the cool uniques that we're adding to the game. Next, let's move on to the Rogue. So we're also updating some class mechanics and other things. Inner Sight has kind of been eclipsed by other things in our game, right? When we first made Inner Sight, it triggered off of this idea that you were going to target a single enemy, pick on that enemy, and build up this gauge, and then you have unlimited energy, and unlimited energy was supposed to be this really crazy, rare thing that was not going to happen very often. It turned out that's not really the case through itemization and other things. You can kind of solve resource a lot easier nowadays.
Yeah, it's fun to do that too.
Yeah, and it's fun. We want people to do that. Yeah. So we have to update our other systems in accordance to that, which is kind of what we're doing here. So now you don't only have to hit the marked enemy, but you can charge up Inner Sight off of everything. So as you're blowing up waves of enemies, you still want to make sure you're hitting the one that's targeted, but now you'll get a little bit of gauge off of any enemy that you hit. And now in addition to that, the payoff is better. So not only are you going to get that unlimited energy still, but you're also going to get a 25% crit chance boost. So now you're going to be hitting harder when you are in Inner Sight mode. So now there's actually a damage component there too, in addition to the unlimited energy. Next, Necromancer. So like I said, Book of the Dead is getting upgrades. I kind of picked one slice from each part, from each minion type. So here you can see your Skeletal Reapers, the wind-up attacks now, can reduce one of your active cooldowns by a pretty chunky amount. 3 seconds is insane, but there'll be a number that'll make sense there. Maybe it is 3. Next one for the mages, one of their upgrades used to be that they've made frozen enemies vulnerable, and now they just make everything vulnerable. So actually, if you want cold mages to solve vulnerable you pretty much can, just with this upgrade. And last but not least, we have your Iron Golem. So Iron Golem, now that when you tell it to go somewhere and do that slam attack where it pounds the ground, it'll also pull in enemies, very similar to Corpse Tendrils. So it's not as required, to put that on your bar. Cool. You have another way to kind of get that effect. Another thing I didn't put on the slide that I want to call out with Golems that'll make players happy. Golem now, while you're CC'd or at any time, when you activate it, it's going to make both your Golem and you unstoppable. Ooh. So now you have another source of unstoppable on the Necromancer for minion builds, which I think
Necro is going to be interesting this next season.
You get your bone spear taking people out.
Extra projectiles.
That's awesome for a Golemancer build for sure.
Yeah. So next, like I was saying before, flat damage effects, dust devils, and earthquakes are going to be your friends now. So before, these legendaries did not scale very well. And what I mean by that is that the damage that they did was fixed. So if you got like a dust devil or earthquake or whatever, you got that legendary at like level 25, the damage that it did was just a number, and that number didn't really go up with you or scale with you in a meaningful way. Now, under the hood, all of these things are going to be scaling based off your weapon damage, which means that these things will scale with you as a player and be much more viable.
It's going to be so much better that it's all based off your flat damage.
So this one is Dancing Bolts.
As far as managing the other affixes. Because you used to have to choose between damage
it's the same
or either resistance or some sort of defense.
This is me just changing out my weapon while I have this legendary equipped. This is in Season 4, so you can see it does an amount of damage on the left, about 5,400 there. Now that number on the right, I didn't get a new legendary, I didn't change it, I didn't do anything except change my weapon, and that increased the damage that these Dancing Bolts are going to do. So when you get these legendaries now, they're going to scale with you and do quite a bit more damage and be punchy as you go into the late game. This is in addition to like tempering and other things, talking to these things, so you can actually itemize into making them more powerful as well.
And it's funny because there's some people I think that didn't catch, maybe they didn't catch the first part of the itemization, but they're looking at this second legendary, the new one, and they're going like, well, it's only got 3 stats or something. You should probably watch a recording of this.
Yeah, that's when it drops, not after you've done all your stuff on
it. There's a lot of itemization changes to make the items feel more valuable themselves in Season 4. So I recommend watching the recording just for people that may miss the
It's going to depend on what Joe says about the end game, though.
Yeah, you can tap 2 more affixes on them. There you go.
Yeah, they got 5.
That's right.
Easy enough.
All right, so last but not least is opening up designs. Like I talked about, one of our goals here, make things more generally useful, less restrictions. We can zoom in here. I have 2 examples. One is Azurath here on the left, a unique sword. So 2 things going on here. First, you can see before, it was that your core skills have a chance to freeze enemies and deal a bunch of damage to them. On the right, we've removed the core skill requirement, and now any of your skills can have a chance to freeze enemies. So this means you can use it on, like huge. Charge and other similar things like that, where maybe you want to make a build around something that's not a core skill to proc this, you totally can, or it's just going to proc more often and you just play normally. Second thing you'll notice is on the left, Barbarian only, we just removed that restriction. So now any class that can use a sword can use Azurath. Again, we're just trying to look for places where there was restrictions, and when we can, we're just removing them. Next one is Opportunist. This one I'm really excited about on the Rogue. I think I'm going to play a Rogue this season. So on the left is the old version, where it says when you break stealth with an attack, you can drop stun grenades, right? And then those grenades deal damage and stun enemies. On the right, we've removed a lot of these restrictions and made it more useful. So now it's when you enter or break stealth, and you don't need to break stealth when you attack. So anytime that you cast stealth or go into stealth, you're going to get 2 sets of these, and it's just going to be when you go in and out, and you just get stun grenades. You also notice that this is a tuning thing, but the stun duration on stun grenades has been buffed. It's a second now. And then we also did a thing that I'm really excited about here, where every single stun grenade legendary will increase the damage of your grenade skills, and all of them are going to have this. So if you want to make a stun grenade build, if you collect, the 4 or 5 of these legendaries that kind of combo together, every one is going to incrementally increase your grenade's damage as well, to a point where they'll be doing a lot more meaningful damage in your build. All right, last but not least, we've got hardcore updates. So for you hardcore players, Elixir of Death Evasion is being removed from the game.
Set this one out mentally,
it's not coming back, just like you.
I don't play hardcore.
We've also redesigned the flame shield enchantment. So before, it used to be a cheat death mechanic where when you took fatal damage, it would, proc and save you.
These people that play hardcore with all these bugs and everything, why make a character
and then it has an
when you can lose 30 hours?
We've heard from the community kind of loud and clear. They really want hardcore to be hardcore, so we're going to deliver on that. Now you actually have to be careful. Sanctuary is a very scary place, and you won't have those fail safes to keep you alive anymore. And finally, PTR feedback. So like we mentioned before, we're going to be looking at the PTR feedback very carefully. Please let us know what you think. The class team is particularly excited about what's working for you and what's not working for you. When you're kind of tuning your feedback and typing it to us, we're really looking at things like tuning and balance. We know that things are going to be pretty wacky in this brave new world that we're going into. We're also looking for what changes really made the game more fun to you. You're going to see a lot of them, a lot more than what I presented today. We really want to know what changes we did, maybe didn't hit the mark, and why. Maybe we didn't go far enough, or this thing could have been way better with just a small tweak. And then last but not least, we want to know what would you like to see that didn't make it in, right? We're forever going to be updating this game, and we really want to know, a lot of these changes are coming from your feedback, like, flat damage scaling, unstoppable coming on the golem for necromancers who've been wanting more sources of it. What other things are you seeing that, have always kind of bugged you or have always been kind of a pain point that you would like us to change? And we'll be looking for that feedback. So yeah, that's pretty much everything we got for classes. Thanks everybody again.
Yes, so
we're excited.
There is a ton of information for classes, and it's funny because everyone's treating this PTR feedback slide as if we're done.
No. There's more. There's a lot more.
I'm sorry.
He hasn't even gotten started yet.
As the chat calls it, Joe Piper, Rap God, has not spoken yet. So he will be talking here now about endgame specific items.
Sure, thanks. So,
all right, let's go.
A couple things I want to talk about first. We're going to talk about some new content stuff in just a minute, but there are some other things that are also changing at the same time. You'll see on the PTR that we've made adjustments to world tiers, and that we've changed the XP modifier that you get for opting into certain world tiers. So, so the reason why we're doing this, we want to get players to endgame a little bit faster. So we've made an adjustment where World Tier 2 now goes, instead of giving you 20% bonus XP,
if you have an in-game to get them too.
World Tier 3 now gives you 150% bonus XP as opposed to the 100% you got before. And then World Tier 4 gives you 250% bonus XP instead of the 200% that you got before. So again, we want to get players into the space where they're getting a chance to play with these new items. They're getting a chance to see some of the new content we're going to be talking about in just a minute. And experience more of the end game and have a little less emphasis on the level up process being like a lot longer as it is today. So this is our stated intent. We want more players to be able to reach level 100. We want them to get more of these level 925 items. We want them to start seeing more greater affixes. We want them to engage in tempering and masterworking. And we want them to see everything else the game has to offer. We want to make sure that we're removing some of the restrictions and making that possible. And we're continuing to think about that as we move forward. This is just all of the things we're talking about today are just one more step on the journey of Diablo 4. We're going to continue, as Adam already called out, to continue to make the game better based on feedback and just continue to add more cool stuff that we think is great for the game, and that also that we're hearing from our player base, our community, would be really, really great for the game experience. So with that quick little thing out of the way, let's go ahead and jump into the first major update we have planned that you get a chance to see on PTR. And that is, we made a significant update to Helltide. Now, I think that everyone will remember that in Season 3, we made an adjustment to Helltide timing, where now they're basically up for 55 minutes out of every hour. There's a 5-minute gap between each Helltide experience. And we think that that's great. Players are able to get better access to Forgotten Souls and all the gameplay there. But we also, looking back on Season 2 and the Blood Harvest regions where the armies of Lord Zir were marching across Sanctuary, as we all recall from quarter 4 of last year, and capturing people and draining them of blood. That was we thought that was a really fun, frenetic, social experience in the overworld. It's just a blast, kind of go through, kill vampires, save people, and summon bloodseekers as well along the way, and getting good rewards as you go. It was a fun experience. In Season 3, we had a different take on that idea with the form of Arcane Tremors, where players can go and engage in a number of different small activities and traps. And also managed to.
How is this in game though?
In a group and go ahead and
just
get
adding
more,
density
and more
and items to
and governing stones and continue to just get
quote unquote in game.
And again,
That's
we
already
thought that
there.
was pretty fun, right? So we wanted to take some of these ideas back to Helltide, and I'll be actually I think it might be even easier if we could just throw to Ruben potentially, who I think might actually be able to be in Helltide right now.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Looks like that's the case. So we want to take some of these ideas back to Helltide. Hello, yes, you're going to get destroyed. We want to take some of these ideas back to Helltide and make sure that our overworld, exciting, demonic invasion experience that players get to go through here is just more fun.
I get it's more EXP.
Was that just a giant hellworm belching a bunch of enemies at?
That was a giant hellworm belching a bunch of enemies up. So a bunch of things have changed. So one of the things that let me dive in. So one of the things that we did is we add this new idea of a threat system. Now you'll see the eagle-eyed among you can look to the left of the minimap. Thank you, Ruben. Can look to the left of the minimap, and you'll see a horizontal bar. It's segmented in 3 pieces next to that kind of like half-completed pentagram there. As the players are killing demons in Helltide areas, they are slowly growing their threat over the course of the experience. And as they do that, they're going to find like more like ambushes. They're going to find more creatures coming and trying to kill them as they kind of like roll through the space. And this,
the density I can definitely use because I hated having to run around Helltide looking for mobs.
Killing like regular monsters.
I'd rather just be like
they're always
non-stop,
earning more threat for the things that they do. The armies of hell are paying more attention. So as the player is going to go through this process,
I really wish they would have had the Cinders auto pickup though. Like they just
now
go
once the
into
player
you.
has gotten towards the end of this, like they actually have
kill people.
When the armies of hell have been fully
having to run around and pick up Cinders is super
tone,
annoying.
Which I think that I think we might actually hear soon potentially. I guess we'll have to see. But you'll hear a tone alerting you to the fact that the armies of hell are basically coming for your blood, right? They're coming for you at this time. And in that case, you're going to see that there's going to be a new creature type that's going to appear, which we'll be able to get to in just a second. Some of the other big changes that are happening in Helltide alongside this, while we kind of wait for some of this stuff to happen, is we have reduced the level requirement or the world tier requirement for Helltides. You'll start to see them in lower world tiers now, so they're in a great way for you to level up. Okay, it looks like the forces of hell have been alerted. So now there's going to be like it's going to be almost a little more of a holdout. More invasions and ambushes are going to start to occur at this time, and it's going to have a kind of cap-off event towards the end. We'll talk about as it arrives. But you can see right now that threat is draining while this event is occurring. So you've kind of like reached that maximum threshold. The minions of hell are coming for you. You're going to be kind of fighting pretty hard for this stuff. But it's a great way to get like access to a lot of elites. Once this bar is drained, once again, you can start building it up by, again, going out, doing more things inside the Helltide experience. You're going to get more opportunities for more Cinders and more of these ambushes.
I don't really see that it dropped anything major, though, unless I missed it.
The end of this now.
From that,
Should be getting a
bigger mob or whatever.
Here.
Yeah, So yes, and now one of the Hellborn has managed to appear. Hellborn they're very much a similar creature to some of the Bloodseekers that we've seen in the past. These are adventurers who have fallen to the depravities of hell. They're now serving their infernal
Dude's
masters.
got some HP.
They have great drops, like they'll drop like legendary equipment, and they will also drop summoning materials for Lord Zir moving forward. So
he's about to die if he cut
some
away
of those
from that.
mats as you go through the experience. And that's actually one of the other things that we did as part of our general updates is we kind of wanted to go through and do a pass to make it easier to find more of those boss summoning materials, like from doing like different kinds of content. So while obviously you can go to Helltides and open tortured gifts to get living steel pretty quickly, we want to make sure that there's like, if you find like a treasure goblin, there's a chance now that treasure goblin could drop a random boss summoning material. When you go and you open bounty caches or whisper caches at the end of a bunch of whispers runs, like in that situation, you'll also get a chance to get a random boss summoning material. And we find more opportunities through different parts of the experience in like local events. Like when you're going and just finding events, you
having to get pieces of
there's a chance for you to get
something just to summon one boss
even
fight.
elites have a very, very low chance
to drop
some of these materials. And again, all to make it just a little bit easier to kind of like gain access to these bosses as you're leveling up and playing, even if you're not saying specifically in just Nightmare Dungeons to get Distilled Fear or something else, right? So yeah, I think those are going to be some pretty fun updates for the players. That's obviously
pretty
not
exciting.
everything.
Yeah.
So so another thing that we're doing as part of this is that we are adding a new boss. We're adding Andariel. So you can now fight Andariel. She is summonable by defeating the Beast in Ice and Lord Zir, and she's got the same drop table as Duriel. So we want to make sure that players have a couple different ways
to get Ubers, I guess,
to these really, really powerful uniques that Duriel drops, but also for that shot at getting those Uber uniques without always requiring players to go back to those same places. Yep. So between opening up the options of how you gain access to materials you can use to go farm Uber uniques a little bit earlier, to like now saying, hey, go do Nightmare Dungeons, go do some of this overworld content and Helltide content to gain access to Beast and Ice in Lord Zir, so you can go farm Andariel there. We think that's going to be like a really, really fun change. And Andariel is a really cool fight. I think we might actually have like a quick little shot of the summoning for Andariel, as we all know her and love her. There she is.
Wow. Cool.
She's back.
It kind of looks like the Malignant Tunnels.
You know, it's going to be.
I want to say the fight's been updated too. It's not exactly the same as what you did before.
Yeah, so. The designer's been very.
All right, well, I guess I'm just going to end that there. I mean, pretty good changes. One new boss, one new ways to farm Ubers other than Duriel. I guess I really have to see when the PTR comes out. But, I mean, it's looking better. Guess we'll see. Peace out.